Okay, so today's podcast, we're going to slow it down a little bit. I usually go through quite a lot in my 30-minute podcast, and I haven't had a real chance to kind of slow it down and just savor the taste of some of the topics that I've been discussing. So today's podcast is sponsored by, no, I'm joking, we don't have sponsors here, but we're going to do a podcast today on the man, the myth, the legend, J.J. Abrams. J.J. Abrams is a sort of mythical creature in the sci-fi fantasy community because he has had his hand in creating, and if not creating, executive producing, writing, directing so many classic, successful sci-fi, mostly sci-fi. I said fantasy, but it's not really, I mean, it's a little bit of fantasy, but mostly sci-fi, if not all sci-fi TV shows and movies. And so we're going to go through some of the more some of the J.J. Abrams. J.J. Abrams is also a controversial character within the sci-fi community because so many of his shows, they get this huge boost of attention and backing because he is who he is, and he has had incredible success with TV shows and movies. And then some of the more popular things that he's done have, failed to live up to his reputation. One of the biggest I don't even know if you call it, I think, it's one of those shows that lives in infamy within, the television world and sci-fi spectrum, and that's Lost. It's kind of one of those things where you just don't know what to make of that show and its legacy even to this day, but here we are. So let's discuss J.J. Abrams just for a little bit. So I don't know how much background information you need on J.J. Abrams. He's from New York City. He's a film director, producer, screenwriter, and also composer, which I just found out. I didn't know that he actually has composed music for some things. And, he started off in 1990. I think his first well-known series was 1991, which was Forever Young. I don't think people realize that J.J. Abrams is 56 years old, so he's been around in the entertainment industry for quite some time. But he's had a varied career in the entertainment industry and has been, quite successful. His first job in the movie business was at 16 years old when he wrote the music for Don Dohler's 1982 horror movie Night Beast. So, I don't know, he's just had a very, very, very long, extensive career in the entertainment industry. So let's go through some of his more popular shows. I've pretty much seen out, movies and TV shows, pretty much seen all of what J.J. Abrams has. Even if you don't know that you've seen J.J. Abrams' work, you have. Like if you're a sci-fi fan or just even movies, and some of these movies you're going to be like, oh, I've seen that, and you didn't even know that J.J. Abrams had like a hand in it. So let's go through some of the movies first, and then we go through the TV shows because I'm more familiar with his TV shows because, again, he is such a mythical creature in the sci-fi world. But his first movie, which he was a writer on, was Taking Care of Business, which was decently popular. And then he also wrote, but didn't really have a hand in creating or directing or anything like that, a couple of other movies. Forever Young was one of my all-time favorite movies ever in life. I just really love this movie. And he had a hand in writing it. Gone Fishing, Armageddon, Joyride, Mission Impossible is the first of the movies that he had a hand in directing and writing. He also had a hand in, or he directed Star Trek, Super 8, Star Trek Into the Darkness, Star Trek not Star Trek, Star Wars, The Force Awakens, and Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker. He actually directed and wrote the Star Wars, Force Awakens and Rise of Skywalker. So even if, like I said, you've seen those, you're like, oh, I've seen those movies, you clearly have heard of him. He produced, wrote, and directed on a lot of big name movies and things of that nature. Then there's a lot of credits that he's done where he just produced and executive produced Star Wars: The Last Jedi. He was the executive producer of that. He produced the two Mission Impossible, the last two Mission Impossible movies, Star Trek Beyond, and he produced on all of the Mission Impossible movies. So let's get into a little deep dive into the things that he's done where I have actually, not that I haven't seen those movies, but we're going to do a deep dive into his TV shows because those are the things that really has cemented him in sci-fi pop culture. So the very first thing that J.J. Abrams TV show that he actually created, we're gonna focus in on the shows that he have created, not the ones that he just directed, wrote, and produced on, but the ones that he created, because the shows that he created are the things that really cemented his legacy in sci-fi. But I did not know that J.J. Abrams created the show. And I was such a huge fan of it. It was a huge hit. Hold on, guys. This is super early in the morning. For whatever reason, I get very inspired to do podcasts super early in the morning, so I need a little bit of coffee. You have music in the background playing to help you out with the dead air. But I did not know that he created the show. It was like everybody was obsessed with it. Back in the day. I definitely was, being a teenage girl who loved shows like this. But Felicity had no freaking clue J.J. Abrams was the creator of Felicity. It ran from 1998 to 2002. When it comes to Felicity, if you know, you know. If you remember, you remember. And he created, and it's like, not only did he write and direct the show, executive produce, created the theme song, he created the show. And I absolutely loved Felicity. It was such a good damn show. And I don't know what to say about it other than it was just a super huge shock that he created the show. And it's so far left of, all of the sci-fi genre stuff that he does. Because pretty much his whole, Forever Young but that was a little bit fantasy too. For the most part, if you look at his resume, J.J. Abrams' resume is all like fantasy sci-fi, and then you just have Felicity thrown in there. Like, where the hell did that come from? But he created Felicity, so he's just that's and it was super popular. It wasn't like it was a throwaway show that nobody's ever heard of. It was hugely popular. Actually, I just want to go into this real quick and just, it ran for 4 seasons. Oh, Felicity was such a good damn show. It really was. It almost made me want to go back and find it somewhere and rewatch it. It literally got voted in 2007 as one of all-time best TV shows ever. And I would just remember loving this show so much. The theme of the show of just, being Felicity, that, which Kerry Russell starred in, who, went on to have success outside of that show, being a young, college-bound, female, trying to make her way through the world, really hit home with, I think, a lot of young females at the time. It was, your typical, like, soap opera, teenage soap opera sort of, drama. And it was so good, and I absolutely, so I totally get that. I was obsessed with Felicity when it came out. But moving on to the next, I was just really shocked that he created, I cannot believe he created Felicity. To the TV shows that I absolutely 100% know he created, and literally judge TV shows based on, like, it was a time in my life when me and my brother would discuss the next J.J. Abrams TV show. Like, because when TV shows come out, the first thing that you will know is that it's a J.J. Abrams show. That's the first thing that they promote. This is a J.J. Abrams show, and it's like, okay, here we go. This is a roller coaster. What are we about to get? Because it's such a roller coaster with J.J. Abrams. All his shows, for the most part, don't run for long. But I've said in another podcast, my last podcast, I think it was the Rotten Tomatoes 100 best sci-fi shows of all time. which I'm going to do the podcast for that today as well, if you're listening to this when I post it. I talk about how sci-fi shows traditionally don't get a lot of seasons. You know, they don't. Like, if you get to 3 seasons in a sci-fi fantasy show, you've hit a milestone when it comes to, you know, when it comes to TV. They're not like other TV shows. You know, they have a very, like, the audience for sci-fi TV shows or sci-fi in general, you know, it's very specific, you know, audience. So it doesn't necessarily reach out to everyone. So the fact that a lot of our shows get canceled after 1 or 2 seasons is pretty typical. Like I said, if you make it to 3 seasons, it's great. If you make it to 4 or 5, that's like a milestone. So it just in general, J.J. Abrams shows don't really usually last past 3 or 4 seasons, but he has a lot of TV shows, and they tend to get a lot of attention because they all start off really, the theme of J.J. Abrams shows is that they all start off super strong. Like, he always comes up with the best premises, best foundation, and the first season, so much potential, so much, you know, goodness in it, and you want to see the growth of it. And then by the second season, going into, if it gets a third, that's when, you know, it usually his shows, if they start to fall off, that's when they start to fall off. So we're gonna go into the next show, which actually was one of my favorite all-time shows. It was just a great show, and I didn't expect it to be such a great show, but it ran from 2001 to 2006. It actually had, you know, a lot of, like I said, we're talking about sci-fi here, and this wasn't really a sci-fi show. It was actually in the time of the sort of, I did not like it because it was just another, for me, I thought it was just another femme fatale TV show, movie, you know, because it was, for whatever reason, we went through this period in entertainment and pop culture where the femme fatale trope, you know, we have the Mary Sue trope, and we'll talk about Mary Sue tropes in another podcast, but the femme fatale trope in entertainment was just super popular around this time that the show Alias is the show we're talking about now, got created. And when Alias, and they actually had a femme fatale, I think femme fatale was a TV show that was on at around the same time, but Alias came on, and I did not watch it. I did not watch Alias. I don't think I watched it maybe until like the very last couple of seasons, or I didn't watch it when it was actually aired, and I didn't watch it until after it went into syndication or something along those lines. But I know I did not want to watch the show when it aired, and I missed a lot of the first couple of seasons. If I did end up watching it while it was still on, it was the very last couple of seasons, because I was just over that trope. I was over the femme fatale trope, and I did not give it a chance. And then when I finally started watching Alias, and people who are fans of Alias know this show was amazing, and it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know what made it amazing. It's the only reason why I really like cap for Jen Gardner, because she was great in this role and I wasn't expecting it. But she was absolutely great in this role. The show was great. The writing was great. It was so entertaining. And again, it's so tropey. It's, you know, the femme fatale trope. It is the secret agent spy trope. It is, you know, the what's the movies with Matt Damon? It was like the female version of that, and I think this was out before the Matt Damon movies came out with Born Identities. But it was that sort of, you know. I'm just so over that. I'm so over it, and I was over all of it even back in the early 2000s. But this show was absolutely the best of the best when it comes to J.J. Abrams. And so I absolutely loved it. But I absolutely knew it was a J.J. Excuse me, guys, hold on. I absolutely knew that it was a J.J. Abrams. I'm a little under the weather, to be quite honest with you, because I live here in the Midwest, and the weather has just been so up and down. I swear we would go from 100-degree weather, and then within 2 days we're back down to like the 60s and raining and feeling like it's fall, and my air conditioner is on. I sleep with my air conditioner on, so it's just been like the weirdest sort of up and down weather you can imagine for the spring, and it has left me constantly sick. So My throat isn't doing great, and that's great for, somebody who's listening to someone talk on a podcast. But anyways, we're going to move on to the next. Now, you know what? I'm going to save this for last, because this is probably the most controversial. Again, we're going to talk about Lost, and we're going to talk about Lost towards the end here, because it's probably the most controversial series that J.J. Abrams has ever done, because of the fall off of this series, the absolute fall off of it. So we're gonna move on to he did write or not write but direct an episode. How many episodes? One episode of The Office, but we're not talking about that. We're just going to talk about the shows that J.J. Abrams created. And so the next show that he created, which was an absolute masterpiece that I don't think enough people talk about. I don't think it lives in the heads of enough sci-fi fans out there, and I want a resurgence of enthusiasm and praise for this show, because it's another show of J.J. Abrams that I did not watch when it came on. When it aired on television. It wasn't until I think it was on Netflix that I watched this series, and from start to finish, it should be hailed as the shining light of all J.J. Abrams' creative majesty, and that show is Fringe. He was the creator of Fringe, and he was a writer, executive producer, composer of this show. It was a masterclass of sci-fi amazingness. And it's funny because I'm doing this 100 best sci-fi TV shows of all time podcast, and I'm on number 4 now, and I want to see if Fringe is one of the shows that I'm looking for to see if it actually falls on this list, because it is one of those TV shows. It ran for quite some time. I think it was quite popular. Actually, I'm going to go in here and kind of see what the reception of Fringe was. Give me a second, because I did not watch it when it aired, so I don't remember what exactly the reception of it was, but it had 3 seasons, I think. No, I'm wrong. It's actually one of the TV shows that had the longest run of J.J. Abrams. It had 5 seasons. It hit the 100 episode mark, which is like in television is the goal is to hit the one, because I think at 100 episodes is when you can go into syndication. So this series was absolutely amazing. If you don't know about it, it was a TV series that is kind of very difficult to explain, because it was so heavily sci-fi, and it was done so brilliantly, and it just leaves you like wanting more and going deeper, and like, are they going to pull this? And they did, because it's one of those things where it's like J.J. Abrams and you're on the edge of your seat thinking that this is going to fall off so hard, like pretty much all of his TV series do. And it never did. It never did, all the way up until the very last episode, where everything got wrapped up so beautifully, because you get to a point where you're thinking like, this is never going. They have literally tied themselves in a hole where they can't explain their way out of, the it's going to be plot holes after plot holes. And I'm pretty sure there are plot holes. There's probably people out there who can point out some plot holes with the series, but for the most, you always gonna have plot holes in science fiction, because it's fiction. It's like nothing's ever gonna make perfect sense, right? But it literally tied up the story so beautifully in the end. And I think I cried at the end because it was so beautifully done. But it's about a FBI agent named Olivia Dunham, and a scientist, Walter Bishop, and his son. And I won't tell you, because the premise of the show is literally the outcome of the show. If you know, you know. And so I won't tell you about Walter Bishop and what actually begins the whole cycle of this show, because that is literally how the show wraps up. And it's a very, very big, spoiler of, you won't know that it's a spoiler, but it literally is like the beginning. It all comes into one big 360 of how this show, but it starts off with somebody losing someone, and it's a whole thing. So I won't go into that, but it literally is about parallel universes. It's so good. All the acting was amazing in it. What's the guy from Dawson's Creek? He was in it. Joshua Jackson was in it. My goodness, the show was so amazing. As a sci-fi show, it was. This is what I mean when, and even in 100 best sci-fi podcast, when I talk about that, I have to hurry up because I want to talk about Lost and get into the drama that was Lost in a second. But I talk about, because that list has so many shows on it, and the sci-fi incorporates so many shows that actually don't have science fiction in it at all. And I'm actually going to do a list of my favorite sci-fi shows that are literal sci-fi, because everything kind of gets thrown into science fiction. And when I say this show was so science fiction, it's so specific. This is science fiction, right? Those space odyssey shows where you just have a bunch of aliens in space aren't science fiction, because they don't actually have any science in them. They're fantasy, they're space fantasy shows with aliens, and they get thrown into the science fiction category because it has aliens in this in space, but it's not science fiction. This is a true science fiction show. It was so good. It was so complicated at certain times and areas, and from start to finish, it is, like I said, is the shining light of J.J. Abrams and his creative majesty. And I think, maybe he's been chasing that ever since Fringe, because he has had a lot of shows outside of that just didn't live up to, not a lot, I won't say a lot. He's had a couple. One of those shows, and actually came out before Fringe, so we'll get right into it. We won't be able to cover any of his other shows. You had another show, which he wasn't the creator of, and like I said, we're just going to go over the shows that he actually created. But I just want to mention it because it gets an honorable mention. He was executive producer on this show, but we're not gonna, it didn't do well. That's fine, because he really didn't create it. It wasn't a J.J. Abrams creation, but it was Almost Human, and I watched that show, or tried to watch the show, and it didn't really go anywhere. It was one of those series that, again, I think maybe it got one season. I think it went through the 13 episodes, but you wanted it to be better than it was. I talk about it in 100 Best, because it's actually made it on the 100 Best Sci-Fi Shows of all time, and I couldn't really figure out why, because they got one season and it never really got a chance to take off. But I tried hard to watch this show, but again, it's not a creation of his. He just executive produced on it. And then he executive produced, or he's creating creating a TV show called Duster now, and we'll see what that's about. But for the most part, the shows that, he's had a couple of Razzie Awards as well. Or not a couple. I won't say a couple. He's had one, and that was for Armageddon. I don't know why that was for Armageddon, because people love that. But he's won a crap ton of Emmy Awards and television awards, specifically for Lost. Fringe did win at least one for the Writers Guild, because it just deserves so much. And like I said, I want a resurgence of fans when it comes to the Fringe, the TV show Fringe, because it was just such an amazing, shining light example of what sci-fi television should be. But let's get into Lost for a second, because Lost was Lost. It ran for a long time, and when it came out, it had the nation in a chokehold, right? And I started watching it the first season, like everybody started watching it the first season, and then it just nosedived. It had 6 seasons, and it was shocking to me that people kept paying attention to Lost. But it was like, again, it was one of those shows that was a great, outstanding premise to a show. It pulled you in and made you really interested in these stories of these passengers. And I'm going to tell you exactly where lost me. I'm going to tell you where it lost me. It was an episode, and I cannot remember, I think it was in the first season, because I really don't think I watched past the first season of Lost. So I'm not a connoisseur of, if the show got better. I just know the reception of Lost continued to be confusing, and people continued to get upset, and it kind of was like this story that kind of did this 360, and people were like, well, were they in purgatory and things like that. And it seemed like fans were really, really frustrated with the direction of the show. But again, it went 6 seasons and people stuck with it. So I really paid more attention to the reception of it after season 1, because I bailed out after season 1. And I'll tell you exactly the episode that I bailed out of Lost, because it was frustrating. I am not a huge fan of those shows. And it's funny because Fringe is that, but they did it so well because they had individual episodes that were very compelling, where not everything that happened in Fringe kind of played into the larger plot. Because when you have shows that have this recurring theme of wonder and mystery, and you all you want to know is you want to figure it out, and you got to wait 6 seasons to figure out what the hell is going on, it can be very frustrating. And so in order to do that and make it work, you have to have individual episodes within the larger story that wrap up within that episode. Like, this starts at one place and ends at another place within that episode to keep people interested in this long running mystery that's going to take 5 or 6 seasons to get to. And Fringe did that very well. I don't know how well Lost did that, because literally by the middle of the first season, I was like, okay, I need to know the answer to this, because I'm not willing to wait, seasons on top of seasons to figure out what the hell's going on with these people who are crashed on an island. And that gets very frustrating. I think the people who watch Lost maybe didn't realize how frustrated they were going to be with not having answers for 6 years. That's crazy to me. So yeah, I dipped out first season, and the episode that I really did it for me after waiting for some answers and never getting answers, getting more questions, was it was an episode where it was supposed to be this, like, it was this loud noise, and it was like this monster, and it was like, you remember the episode where it was like and it turned out to be something like black smoke. I don't know what the black smoke was, but I remember the reception of that episode and people's disappointment, and like it was black smoke. It was like that was the monster that was on the island or something like that. And I was like, you know what? I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. Okay. I'm not doing it. And so the people that stuck with it, I was like, good luck. I hope you get what you're looking for out of this, but I'm not willing to wait 6 seasons to figure out what's going on with these people on this island. So I dipped out after it. The show ran for 6 seasons. Fans of the show were literal fans of the show. They really stuck with it. It was just one of those controversial J.J. Abrams TV shows that kind of lives in infamy in people's mind of, was it really a good show? Was it not? Like, how do you judge Lost? And actually, I'm very interested in seeing where it falls on the 100 best sci-fi shows list of Rotten Tomatoes, because it is that show. It's that, it is that show. Because like the critical reception of it is like, again, some critics say it's like among the best television shows of all time. It's like one of those cult TV shows that, broke away from the cult sort of following that it had and became like a super huge hit. It's the most seasons of any show that he's, I do believe that he's ever done. But again, it has a weird sort of reputation within popular culture of people who are just like, it's kind of like Heroes. Heroes is another one of those shows that has a weird reputation of being, where it started and how enthusiastic people were with the show Heroes, and how it kind of nosedived, and I was in this weird sort of limbo of like, how do you categorize it? Was it an amazing show, or, was it a huge disappointment? But I think people who are fans of Lost genuinely would say it's a great show. For me, like I said, I wasn't willing to wait 6 seasons to kind of figure out that they were in purgatory or some shit like that. So, and then the flashbacks, all of the flashbacks it took you out of the story, and flash forwards, and it wasn't my favorite way of telling a story. And I always told myself I was going to go back and watch Lost, because it was one of those shows that, it was science fiction, it was mystery, it was blah 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 blah, supernatural and all this stuff, and it was just I don't know, I didn't have the patience for it when I was younger. So if you're a Lost fan and you want to comment down there how you, in hindsight, after all these years later, looking back on the series, what do you think its legacy in TV history is? But that is J.J. Abrams pretty much in a nutshell, his most popular TV series, and why he lives in infamy in the sci-fi world and community. And that is my podcast for you guys. Again, don't forget to like, share, positive feedback, and subscribe, guys. If you want to listen to my podcast when I upload them, you can go over to the main page, go over to my Spotify page, and subscribe to my Spotify page for 99 cents a month, and you can listen to it as soon as I upload it. If not, you can wait for the premiere date here on YouTube and listen to it for free. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. Until next time, guys. Bye.